Hello everybody, Steve Burns here. We're going to get started with this whole concept of value-based workflow by understanding how to manipulate tonal values to improve our color. So we're looking at this image here. It is monochromatic, but we also want to take a look at what is the primary point of focus here. Our primary point of focus is this vase and its platform that the vase is sitting on. I want to enhance that. Now, if we look at the tonal values, and what we're talking about is the black and white information that basically comprises the image. There are two areas that we as artists are working in. One is always going to be your color, and the second will always be your values. Whether you are a digital painter, whether you are a traditional painter, working with pen and ink, it doesn't matter. We're dealing with two areas, values and color. So if you notice here, I've got the layer duplicated. I'm going to duplicate it once again with a Command or Control J. And I want to take a look at how these values look overall. So I want to take a look at the values as they are naturally. So I'm going to hit the Command Shift U, which is the shortcut for Desaturate. And these are the values that are actually making up these images. So the idea here is that we have so much tonal information and contrast conflicting with our primary point of focus. Our primary point of focus being, once again, our vase and the platform that's sitting onto it. I want to minimize the values all around this so that the viewer's eye is going to be led directly to our primary subject here. So when you compose your images, composing it through the camera is only half the battle. Now we have to work in post to actually control our values to lead our viewer's eye where they go. So the basic concept is that the viewer's eye will always lead toward the hottest point of a photograph. So we're going to use that concept to control the visual direction here. All right, so we created a layer. So this is the first step and understanding what we have in our image in terms of values. So I don't want to maintain these values. I want to create something else. I'm going to duplicate this layer one more time so we can start working. Now I'm going to take this layer and place it inside of a group. I'm going to hit Command or Control G for the group. I'm going to rename this group black and white. Okay. And I'm going to turn this one off, is right below it, which was our desaturated. So we're looking at a duplicative desaturation. So if I turn off this top group, we get to see our color. So I want to keep that in mind. Now I'm going to start utilizing a tool to start manipulating my values so that the viewer's eye is going to be focused more onto this subject. I'm going to utilize the concept of my adjustment layers. Go to my adjustment layers at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and target my curves. I'm going to make the curves a clipping path to the layer directly beneath it. So holding the Alt or Option key, place my mouse in between the two layers and click and release. Now, whatever adjustments that I'm going to make are going to be applied only to this layer. Now let's keep in mind here that the goal here is to minimize the effects of the contrast all around the vase and the table so that we can lead the eye directly to our main subject. And I'm going to do so by bringing my highlight values down. So here are my curves, my black information, my 256 shades of gray all across here. Let's go ahead and pull this off so that's easier for you guys to see. And I'm going to take the highlights, which is along this this right hand side of the curve, and minimize them by bringing them down. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm flattening out the tonality of my image. I'm taking down, so my highlights, which is represented by this point here, if I place them on this tonality right here, it's going to take all the highlights in this images and make them this tonal value of gray. And if you look and see my little horizontal line, it's showing you what value of gray is going to alter your highlights to. Okay, so we've made it a medium gray, so it's nice and pretty much nice and flat. Okay, so we've minimized the highlight and the contrast. Now what I would like to do is take away that effect from this vase here. So let's go ahead and pull this up and get in a little bit closer. Hit the B key for my brush. I'm going to resize my brush and paint with black onto the mask to take away the effect off the mask. Alright, so I'm going to start subtly, and we're going to take away the effect. We're going to work like a painter. Okay, bring my brush down using, like, if you're on the Macintosh, utilizing your Option and Control held down together, and left click and drag is going to allow you to resize your brush, subpixel resizing up and down. If you're on the PC, you're going to use an Alt right click and drag left to right will actually resize your brush. It's one of the few instances where your shortcuts in Photoshop are different. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take these away. I'm just using my paintbrush, and as you can see, because the values around it have been minimized, our eye is starting to look toward our primary subject. I might go ahead and open up some of this down here in the bottom with bringing it back to normal values. So what I've done is I've reduced the values, flattened them out all around them, which brought my midtones richer and some of my lower midtones, which is more the darker areas, a lot richer as well. That's kind of Command and 0. And I'm talking about richer, I'm talking about darker. So I say brighten things up. I'm talking about bringing up the values. I'm darkening things down and making them richer, giving them a deeper value. All right, I'm going to get in a little bit closer, and I'm going to hit the X key so I can switch to my paint with white, and I can apply the effect of that curve a little bit more precisely all around my table. Okay, because I really just want the table to stand out. I don't want it to look like that it's been painted on there. I want it to look natural. Hitting the X key again brings out the values. I'm using a smaller brush as I get closer to the edge. Okay, nice. And there we are. We've got a nice little value system going here. All right, looking good. Now I'm going to add a little more detail. I'm looking way back here, and I'm seeing that some of the darker areas are just slightly a bit too rich. Now I could actually apply another curves to bring them up, but I'm going to show you a little bit of a technique that I think will help you out a lot better, and I think will be a lot easier, and that's utilizing Adobe Camera Raw to accomplish this. Now, in order to use my Adobe Camera Raw, I'm going to need to merge these effects into its own layer above the ones that I have targeted currently. I'm going to accomplish that by using a Control or a Command, Alt or Option Shift, all three modifiers held down while I hit the fourth key, which is E. Okay, and it merges everything together. So I'm going to target that layer that has just been merged together. Now keep in mind that everything is inside my black and white folder. Okay, and I'm going to go modify this top layer. Now, before I actually modify this, well, I tell you, if I turn this off and on, I'm going to go ahead and leave it as is. Let's go up here to my filter menu, and I'm going to target the Camera Raw filter. So I could apply it now, or I can right click, make it a smart object. And once I make it a smart object, I can always alter that at any time. Now, filter, Camera Raw filter. And the goal here is to bring up some of these darker values. I have it right here. Now I'm going to work with this filter in a couple of different ways. One is deal with the shadow details. So let's go ahead and actually zoom in a little bit. Here we are. I'm going to get a little closer to my darker values, and then I'm going to target my shadow slider and bring it on over. Okay, see how it's picked up some detail in there? Nice. I think that's great. But it's not affecting the highlights. And that's great because I want the highlight areas or the brighter areas to stay where they are. I only want to target the darker areas. Now I can go over here to the blacks, which is the extreme darks, and bring those up just a little bit as well. And I think that would help out. Now, how about some clarity? Bring up some clarity. Now, if I start to introduce clarity here, we start to introduce some contrast. So I'm going to leave clarity alone. I might even bring them back to the left just a little bit. Okay, it's going to flatten it out and minimize detail. So I might want to consider one last thing, which is some sharpening. Just apply just a little bit to give it a little bit of detail. All right. And I'm going to target OK. It's going to affect the entire background. Okay, that looks great. Now, I'm going to turn it off and on and off and on. Now, I can also adjust my layer opacity so I have a little bit of the best of both worlds. Okay, and now I'm going to do one last little thing is I'm going to apply another Adobe Camera Raw, but this time includes some more to sharpen up the details on this vase and this pedestal. I'm going to duplicate this layer, double click it to go back into the actual object, or I'm going to close that out. I'm going to go right back up here to filter and Camera Raw filter. Okay. And I'm going to come right over here to my clarity. And I'm just actually zoom in just a little bit. I'm going to go to my magnifier glass and zoom in real close so we can see what the effects are going to be. And add some clarity there. Okay, that's nice. Now, in addition to a little bit of clarity, how about if we go on over to my effects tab and play with some dehaze? What dehaze does is it takes your darker values and makes them richer. All right, which is separating. There we go. Look at that. That's beautiful. All right, there we are. That's beautiful. Nice and rich details. Let's go back to the standard option over here, and then play with the clarity a little bit more. There it is. Nice snappy clarity. And I'm going to just pull this around and take a look at that. That's not bad. And I can actually afford a little bit of bringing up my shadows for that vase just a teeny bit. Let me see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to leave it alone. I think I'm going to like it better as is. How about a little bit of exposure? See what it does. Not too much. Just a teeny bit. That's all I need. All right, target OK. Excellent. All right, so let's turn this off and on. That's much nicer. Look at that. Off and on. I turn it off, and once again, get the best of both worlds. If I bring up the opacity on that layer all the way up, look at that. That's real strong. So what I would rather do is this, is apply that effect mostly for this vase. That was the reason why I did it. Because now we're starting to get a little too sharp around it. The contrast is looking too harsh. So with this layer targeted, I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt and target the mask. What that's going to do with the Alt or Option held down is going to give you a black filled mask by default. Takes away the effect. Now, if I utilizing my standard paintbrush, paint with white, hit the X key to make sure my foreground and background color is white, and the foreground is white particularly. Getting close. I'm going to bring the softness down just a little bit, and watch a nice big brush, and I'm going to start to paint that sharper looking, more depth is being applied to the vase. There we go. I'm going to pull it down a little bit, just reducing the size of my brush, just applying this to the vase. Now we're playing with sharpness and contrast, or contrast in general, extreme contrast to flatter contrast as compositional elements. So it's just the vase, not bad. Now let's see what happens if I apply it to the table as well. It doesn't hurt to experiment. So I'm going to go ahead and apply it here, and it's not bad. I like that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and apply, give it a little bit of a richer shadow details. And remember, I'm using the pressure sensitivity of my Wacom stylus so that I can apply the effects as I so choose. Okay, that's much better. Now, if I want to go for a little more subtlety in here, I can continue to add adjustment layers on top of this, right? So once again, these two layers I'm going to use as clipping paths to this image. So I'm going to go target the layer, alter option. Okay, I didn't do it before, but it's no big deal. So if we want to add some subtlety, especially if we feel that the vase has a little bit too much contrast, again, we can apply another adjustment layer. We can do adjustment layer, or we can take it back into our, let's go back to filter and apply our camera raw filter again. Okay. All right. I was in the mask this time, wasn't I? So I've got to have to make sure I'm very careful where I'm located. Target the image, filter, and let's go over to our camera raw filter. Okay. And there she is. All right. So zoom in close here. All right, and we can play around with contrast. Maybe I'll take the contrast down. Now, the contrast is the devil. I usually don't like to mess around with this. So if I feel that the shadows are a little bit too rich, I might go to maybe the extreme blacks and pull that down or pull it up. There we go. Now we have a little more subtlety in there. Okay, we still have blacks, but we pulled out a little bit more subtle tonal ranges. And I'm going to target OK. And we should see there it is. And that effect was only applied to our vase as well as the table. That looks great. So let's apply this. Now let's go do a comparison. I'm going to close this up. I'm going to turn this top layer off. This is our original values that actually created our piece, the colored piece. So these values are the result of this here. Okay. So I don't want these values. I instead want to replace it with these values. So let's turn off the one right below it so it's not going to affect the image. And I'm going to target that, make sure that group is targeted. Utilize a blend mode where we're going to use the values to affect the image but not affect the color at all. Okay, so leave the color alone, just change the values. We click it, there it is. Okay, so there's our color, is back again. If I want to add a little more, color to it, well, that's pretty easy to do. Let's go right down here at the bottom and add an adjustment layer of vibrance. Okay. And double click on the vibrance option. Here's our little sliders right over here. And increase vibrance. Okay. Or we can increase saturation overall. Your choice. We can also see it happening right down here in the bottom. It's really getting strong. So apply your vibrance to taste. All right, and there is your first exercise in understanding value-based workflow and seeing its benefits.